Hello. She wanted to join me on this little adventure. So needy. Oh my god. This is my presentation for Honors English, and this is our unit embedded assessment or our summative final grade. Yeah. Some people may be asking, Alexis, what's the prompt? Well, you're in luck, because prompt question was, to what extent does one's culture inform the way one views others and the world? Many people in our world have different opinions on things, which makes sense because we all grew up differently. Like me, for example, I prefer beef ramen noodles, or some people may prefer the chicken ones or the shrimp ones. We don't know why we prefer these ones because we're just assuming why we like them where we don't actually know the backstory behind it. Our opinion on things depends on our background with them and how we were raised and how we were based on the culture that we grew up with. Not everyone sees everything the same way. Though some say people's culture doesn't affect their beliefs, people need to acknowledge that it does. A lot. And how someone was raised makes a big difference on their personal opinions. In the TED Talk, What My Headscarf Means to You, Yasmin talks about the prejudice people of different backgrounds have for other people. I quote, "That surprise and the behaviors associated with it are a product of something called unconscious bias or implied prejudice, and that results in the ridiculous, detrimental lack of diversity in our workforce, particularly in areas of influence." She goes on further explaining how even looking at someone's appearance, for example, she's a Muslim, she wears a hijab and she covers her hair. And most of that has a negative bias and a negative connotation with how someone looks at you, especially Americans, because of the whole 9/11 thing. Americans have a very bad connotation with hijabs and Muslims because of 9/11. And not most, but like some assume that all Muslims are like that, which they're not. It was just a few bad people that made that decision, and it's not the entire religion by itself. But even when we see a hijab or someone who is Muslim, we're all just like, no, you're a terrorist. No, that's not how that works. Not every Muslim is a terrorist. We base people on what they look like, which that doesn't really let us get to know who they are. Like, we could look at them and we think, oh, they're a bad person, but that's just because of what they're wearing. How their personality is and how they present themselves, with like how they are on the inside, as some people say, it doesn't really affect how they are on the outside, because they may have a great personality, they may be a great friend to have, but some people can't get around their appearance. In the text Legal Alien by Pat Mora, she talks about how she is both American and Mexican, but doesn't feel like she belongs to either culture. She states, and I quote in the text, "An American to Mexicans and a Mexican to Americans." She's essentially saying that both cultures that she feels she should be a part of treat her differently for being one or the other. Americans view her as more Mexican, probably by how well she is able to speak Spanish. And Mexicans, however, say she is American since she is probably born on American soil. That she may speak Spanish, but is not one of them when going to Mexico. If one is a part of multiple cultures, but feels like they don't belong to either because of one culture thinks about the other, it can be hard to find how someone fits in the world. And that just makes people's opinions worse, because some may ask, hey, where are you from? And she's like, oh, I'm from America. And people look at her, and she doesn't look American. She looks Mexican. I've never seen a picture of her myself. I may put a picture right here. But, and she goes to Mexico, and people are assuming she's American because she has more American traits about her. In the text, What is Cultural Identity? By Elise Trumbull, it explains how growing up with different cultural identities affects viewpoints and characteristics. The text states, again, and I quote, "Children begin to develop a sense of identity as individuals and members of groups from the earliest interactions with others. A child who grows up with hearing opinions from everyone, either adults or teachers or people on TV, that can affect their opinion on a subject. People may think that, oh, they're too young to have an opinion on this subject. Yeah, but they're getting all sorts of information from adults and other authority figures that they look up to so that they can base their own opinions on things. They're getting so much information that they are starting to base their own opinions on things. They just don't normally tell anyone, except for like maybe their friends, because their friends will understand, because their friends are going through the exact same thing. But they may not tell an authority figure, because the authority figure will just say, oh, well, you're too young, you don't understand. Different cultures being mixed, especially in America, culture and the way someone is raised has a big influence on how they perceive the world. We all have our own opinions, and we're entitled to those opinions, no matter what someone thinks about them, or if they may or may not agree with them. They didn't grow up and live with the same culture as someone else, which is why there is so much division in the world. But we have to realize that we are not all the same. None of us are the same. We are different and unique, which makes the human species so different from others. We grew up differently, with different parents' opinions rubbing off us. You don't have to agree with someone, but just acknowledge their opinion and move on. Dog.